Imagine for a second that you're a builder, a master architect, and you spend, I don't know, 40, maybe 50 years of your life building this incredible skyscraper.
Okay, your life's work.
Your life's work. You lay
Yeah.
every single brick with your own hands. You design the facade, you reinforce the steel, you polish every pane of glass. It's your legacy.
It's a beautiful image. It's the culmination of a lifetime of effort, of real, tangible work.
Exactly. But then, imagine that in your pocket, you carry a small box of matches. And every single day, just casually, without even really thinking about it, you light a match and you just toss it over your shoulder.
Most of the time, nothing happens.
Nothing. Most of the time, it just hits the concrete, it fizzles out. You don't even bother to look back and check. It's just a habit.
But the law of averages, it suggests that eventually one of those is going to land somewhere it shouldn't.
Eventually.
Yeah.
One of those tiny, insignificant matches lands on a pile of dry leaves someone left, or an old curtain, or, God forbid, a leaky gas line. And in 10 minutes, that skyscraper, the 50 years of sweat and tears and planning, is gone. It's just ash.
And that, I think, is the terrified realization we are grappling with today, that exact scenario.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're not talking about architecture. We're talking about your spiritual resume. We're talking about your character. And we are absolutely talking about those matches we throw every single day, our words. We're doing a deep dive into a lecture titled The Evils of the Tongue by Sheikh Amjad Samir. And let me just say, this isn't your standard be nice to your neighbor advice. This is a survival guide for your soul.
It really is. It's a comprehensive audit of how we speak.
Yeah.
And the central premise is exactly what you just described.
Yeah.
We use thousands, maybe tens of thousands of words a day. We treat them like they're disposable. They're just air leaving our mouths.
Right, they're weightless.
We think they're weightless. But the source material argues that speech is a kinetic force. It builds, yes, of course it does, but it also has this terrifying, almost unbelievable capacity to destroy a lifetime of good in a single careless moment.
So the mission for this deep dive is to get past the kindergarten stuff. We all know lying is bad. We all know, swearing at your grandma is a bad look. We're going to be looking at the much more subtle traps.
The psychological traps.
Yes, the psychological reasons why we say things that end up hurting us, and the spiritual disasters that happen when we're just not paying attention.
And we're going to break it down into 4 specific disasters, as the source calls them, or you could say categories of destructive speech. And what I really appreciate about this source is how it dissects the psychology behind them. It's not just a list of rules.
All right, of the 4.
So first we have indulging in falsehood, which I know it sounds a bit archaic, but it actually covers the very modern, very real phenomenon of bragging about our bad behavior. Second, the trap of argumentation, which is why we really fight and the different ego states that get involved in that. It's fascinating.
I can't wait for that one.
Third is performative eloquence, basically trying to sound smart and why it almost always backfires.
Oh, I feel like a lot of people need to hear that one.
And fourth, we'll get into the nuances of vulgarity and, interestingly, when explicit language is not only okay, but actually necessary.
I have to admit, reading through the notes for this one, I felt a little exposed. There were definitely moments where I thought, oh, I did. I definitely do that. Or, wow, I did that yesterday on Twitter.
You are not alone. I think anyone who reads this material with an honest heart feels the same way. It's meant to be a mirror. And, looking in a mirror can be uncomfortable, but if you don't look, you can't clean your face.
That's a great way to put it.
And the goal here isn't to make anyone despair. It's not to encourage people to take a vow of silence for the rest of their lives. The goal is just awareness. It's that simple. Because you can't fix a leak in your house if you don't even know it exists.
So let's turn on the lights and find the leaks. Let's start with that first disaster. The source calls it indulging in falsehood. Now, like you said, it sounds a little old-fashioned. When I first heard that, I immediately thought of, someone testifying in court and lying under oath.
Yeah.
But that's not what the source is pointing to, is it?
No, not primarily. It's much more social. It's much more everyday.
Right?
While lying is certainly a form of falsehood, the specific issue the source highlights here is about the conversational topics that center on disobedience, on sin, on immorality. It's really about what we choose to bond over with our friends.
What we talk about in the break room at work.
Exactly. And the source gives a very specific, very relatable example involving young people. But frankly, it applies to everyone.
Okay, lay it out for us.
So imagine a person, could be a college student, Could be a 40-year-old who goes out and does something illicit, something that goes against their own values, their own moral code. Maybe they go to a wild party where things get out of hand. Maybe they get completely wasted. Maybe they engage in an illicit relationship. Whatever it is, they do the thing, they cross a line.
So they commit the act. That's step one, the initial mistake.
Right. They commit the act. That is a transgression. It's a sin. It's a slip-up. But the indulging in falsehood part, the actual disaster we're focusing on, is what happens the next morning.
The morning after syndrome, the debrief.
It's the debrief. That's it, exactly. And to understand why this is so serious, we have to look at the theology of it for a moment, because it's really beautiful and fascinating.
Okay.
The source explains that when a person commits a mistake or a sin, especially when it's done at night or in private, the Creator, in an act of immense mercy, often places a cover or a veil over them.
A veil. That's an interesting concept. So it's like a spiritual privacy setting.
That's a perfect modern analogy for it.
Yeah.
It's an act of divine mercy. You messed up, you slipped, your parents didn't find out, your boss doesn't know, the police weren't called, your reputation is somehow still intact.
Nobody screenshotted it.
Nobody screenshotted it. You've been shielded from the public shame of your action. You've been given this incredible gift, a chance to process that mistake privately, just between you and God.
So you've been given a kind of get-out-of-jail-free card, at least in terms of your public reputation.
In a sense, yes. A chance to repent in private. But then, the next morning, that person goes to work, or they walk onto the university campus. They walk into the cafeteria or the break room, and what do?
They can't wait to tell everyone.
They start broadcasting.
Oh, man, you should have seen us last night. We tore the roof off that place. I was so bad, they turned it into a story.
They turn it into a story, they brag, they boast, they recount every single detail with this strange sense of pride or, excitement. And the source argues that this, right here, is where the real catastrophe happens. This is the double sin.
Okay, why double? Unpack that for me.
The first sin was the act itself. And, human beings are weak. We have impulses. We slip up. In the grand scheme of things, that's almost expected. There's mercy for that. But the second sin is the betrayal of that privacy. It's a betrayal of that mercy.
Wow.
The source explains that by speaking about it, by publicizing it, the person is actively, with their own tongue, ripping away the beautiful shield that the Creator had so mercifully placed over them.
That is an act of defiance. It's like someone handing you a raincoat in the middle of a hurricane, and you just throw it on the ground and scream, "Look at me, I'm getting soaked."
That is a perfect analogy. It's a profound act of ingratitude. And the source uses very, very strong language here. It mentions that everyone, generally speaking, has a path to forgiveness. Everyone is close to mercy, except for the specific group, the publicizers.
That is heavy. Why them specifically? Why is the loudmouth the one who gets locked out of the mercy?
It's all about the psychology of the act. Think about it. When you sin privately and you hide it, what emotion is usually attached to that?
Shame, regret, guilt.
Shame, guilt. There's a little voice in your head saying, I shouldn't have done that. And that shame, that guilt, that's the seed of repentance. That's where change begins.
Okay.
But when you brag about it, when you turn your mistake into an entertaining story to make your friends laugh, you are actively normalizing it. You are stripping away the shame. You're trying to validate the action.
You're essentially telling yourself and everyone else, I'm proud of this. This was cool.
Exactly. And not only that, but socially, you're encouraging others to do the same. You're creating an environment, a culture, where that kind of behavior becomes the standard. If everyone in the group brags about being reckless, then being reckless becomes the social currency.
That phrase is key social currency. I feel like in our culture right now, especially on social media, we reward messiness. We reward the disaster story.
Yeah.
If you post a photo of yourself studying quietly in the library, you get maybe 10 likes.
Yeah.
If you post a crazy story about how you got kicked out of a club,
You get 100 comments, it goes viral.
right, you're a legend. Tell us more.
And that is the trap. We are trading our spiritual dignity for a few moments of temporary attention. The source is asking us to completely reverse that logic. It's saying if you slip up, accept the mercy of the veil. Keep it hidden. Repent in private. Don't tear it open just to get a laugh in the break room.
So the takeaway is,
Yeah,
if you have a skeleton in your closet, for God's sake, leave it there. Don't bring it to show and tell.
chuckles. Ideally, you should get rid of the skeleton through repentance. But if it's there, you certainly do not bring it to show and tell. In this case, silence is your protection.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And it brings us, I think, to the second disaster.
Mhm.
And honestly, this section, this is the one that kept me up at night. We're talking about the weight of a single word.
Yes. This is where the source really confronts us with the terrifying precision of accountability. We tend to think of our lives in these broad strokes, right? Oh, I'm generally a good person. My intentions are good. But the source introduces a metric that completely ignores your general vibe and looks at specific individual data points.
The East and West metric.
The East and West metric. The source quotes a tradition that says, a person might utter a single word. Just one. A single word.
One word.
They might say it to make a gathering of people laugh. Or they might say it in a sudden burst of anger. They don't give it any thought. The phrase used is they don't pass a mind to it, meaning they don't weigh its consequences at all. It just comes out.
It's a total throwaway comment.
Yeah.
Something you forget 2 seconds after you say it.
A complete throwaway. And yet, that single thoughtless word can cause them to fall into hellfire a distance greater than the entire distance between the East and the West.
One word. I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. That feels disproportionate. It sounds almost cruel. We say thousands of words every day. How can one syllable carry that much destructive kinetic energy?
I understand why it feels that way. It feels disproportionate because we are on this side of the veil. We don't see the immediate ripple effects. But think about it just in our own world, in tangible terms. A single lie, a single sentence spoken by a political leader can start a war that kills hundreds of thousands of people. It's true.
A single sentence of slander spoken by a jealous coworker can completely destroy a person's career and their family's livelihood. A single cruel mockery, a single joke spoken to a child on the playground can break their spirit for decades.
So words aren't just sounds. They're triggers. They're catalysts. They launch things into motion.
Exactly. They're incredibly heavy. The source is emphasizing that we treat speech as if it is weightless, like helium, but it is actually heavy like lead. And to illustrate this point, and specifically the danger of judging other people, the source tells a story. The story of the two brothers from the tradition of the Israelites.
I love this story. I really do, because it completely flips the script on who you think the bad guy is going to be.
It does. It is a profound narrative about the poison of spiritual arrogance.
Yeah.
So you have two men. The source says they are companions, we can call them friends, or brothers in faith.
One of them is the absolute picture of piety. He is the worshiper. He prays all the time. He fasts. He's disciplined. He's outwardly perfect. He's the guy you would look at and say, yep, he's definitely going to heaven.
He's the saint. He's got it all figured out.
And the other man is the sinner. He's a habitual screw-up. He's constantly falling into disobedience. He's trying, maybe, but he just can't seem to get his act together.
All right, so we have the saint and the sinner. A very standard setup.
A classic setup. Now, the saint, the pious man, takes it upon himself to advise the sinner. He's constantly on his case. Stop doing this. You need to refrain from that. You have to change your life day in, day out.
Which, to be fair, is what a good friend is supposed to do. Right?
Yeah.
We shouldn't just stand by and let our friends drive off a cliff without saying something.
That's true. Giving sincere advice is good. But you have to listen to the dynamic here. This goes on and on and on. The saint is relentless. And eventually the sinner, who is still a human being with feelings, just snaps. He's tired of being constantly judged and looked down upon.
He's had enough.
He's had enough. He turns to the saint and he says, "Leave me alone with my Lord, were you sent as a watcher over me."
Wow. That's a powerful defense. He's not saying I'm right to sin. He's saying back off. My relationship with God is my business. You are not my parole officer.
He is asserting that despite all of his sins, he still has a Lord. He still has a connection. He still has hope. But the saint, the pious man, he's frustrated. He's angry that his advice isn't working. And in that moment of heat, he lets his ego, his arrogance take the wheel. He looks down at the sinner and he says one sentence.
The fatal sin.
The fatal sentence. He says, "By God, God will not forgive you."
Oof.
In another narration, the words are, "God will not guide you."
God will not forgive you. Just slam the door shut.
Locked it and threw away the key. That was the sentence. That was the throwaway comment made in anger.
And what was the result? What was the aftermath?
The source tells us what happened next. Both men die at some point later. They are brought before the Creator for judgment. And God turns to the saint, the man with the lifetime of worship, the prayers, the fasting, and asks him a truly terrifying question.
What's the question?
He asks, "Who are you to swear by me? Who are you to decide the limits of my mercy?"
Wow. In other words, who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are? And then the verdict is handed down, and it's the twist in the story. God says, concerning the sinner, "I have forgiven him. And concerning the saint, the pious man, I have nullified all of your deeds.
Nullified, you mean deleted,
It-
wiped clean.
Erased. The entire lifetime of prayer, the decades of fasting, the charity, all of it.
Yeah.
Gone, reduced to zero, because of that one sentence.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that is the definition of spiritual tragedy.
Yeah.
But why? Why was that sentence so nuclear? Why did it have the power to erase everything that came before it?
Because in that moment, he played God. That is the core issue. As human beings, we are allowed and even encouraged to judge actions. I can look at an action and say, stealing is wrong. I can say to a friend, you shouldn't drink that, it's harmful. That's judging the action.
Right.
But the moment I say, God will not forgive you, I have crossed a line, I am no longer judging the action, I am judging the soul, I am judging the eternal future. I am claiming to have the keys to the gate of divine mercy.
You're not just a critic anymore. You're putting a padlock on the gates of heaven and telling someone, sorry, I have the only key and you're not getting in.
Exactly. It is the ultimate act of spiritual arrogance. In theological terms, it borders on shirk, associating oneself with God's unique authority. And think back to the sinner's desperate plea, leave me alone with my Lord. Even in his brokenness, he held on to that one thread of hope. The saint, in his self-righteous arrogance, tried to take a pair of scissors and sever that final thread.
It really makes you rethink how we look at people we disagree with or people who live lives that we find abhorrent. It is so easy to fall into that mindset of, oh, he's a lost cause, she's just evil. Those people are all going to hell.
That mindset is a deadly trap. The source warns us that a believer must fly with two wings. You need the wing of fear, fear that you yourself might slip up, fear of your own tongue, fear of your own arrogance. And at the same time, you need the wing of hope. Hope in God's immense mercy for yourself and, crucially, for everyone else.
It's a balance. If you only have hope, you become reckless and careless. If you only have fear, you despair and give up.
And if you have arrogance, you crash. The saint crashed because he was flying with one wing of arrogance. He thought he was completely safe, and he thought the sinner was completely doomed. He ended up flipping the script on himself.
So the big takeaway for this one, never ever play God. You can judge the sin, you can hate the action, but you never ever judge the final destiny of the sinner.
Precisely. You have to leave the gatekeeping to the gatekeeper.
All right, let's move on to the third disaster. This one is a little less about high-stakes theology and much more about our daily interactions at work, at home, and especially online. We're talking about argumentation.
Yes. The source calls this disputation or wrangling, and it makes a very important distinction right off the bat, a distinction between a healthy discussion and a destructive disputation.
Because discussion is good, right?
Oh, yeah.
We need to debate ideas. We need to challenge each other to get to the truth. That's how progress happens.
Absolutely. Healthy discussion is vital. The difference, according to the source, lies entirely in the intent. What is your goal?
Okay.
In a healthy discussion, the goal is truth. I'm talking to you because I genuinely want to learn something, or I want to share something I believe to be true. If you prove me wrong with better evidence, I'm actually happy because now I'm closer to the truth than I was before.
Your ego isn't tied to being right.
Exactly. But in disputation or wrangling, the goal is victory. I don't really care about the truth anymore. I care about silencing you. I care about looking smarter than you in front of the group. I care about winning.
It's the ego again. It always comes back to the ego.
It is always the ego. And the source gives us a kind of golden rule for engagement, a simple flowchart. It says, first, look at the topic. Is it a worldly matter? Or is it a religious or serious matter?
Okay, let's start with the worldly stuff. You know, sports rivalries, which political party is better, the best way to drive to the airport, whether a hot dog is a sandwich.
The advice for all of that is stark, and it's difficult for a lot of us to swallow. The advice is drop it.
Just drop it, just like that.
Drop it. Walk away, change the subject.
But, hold on, I have to push back a little here. Just drop it.
Yeah.
Sounds so simple and zen in theory. But have you met people? Have you been on the internet? If I'm arguing with my uncle at Thanksgiving about, say, the economy or even something stupid like the correct timeline of the Star Wars movies, I'm not just arguing to hear the sound of my own voice. I'm arguing because he is objectively wrong, and I feel this deep, almost physical need to fix the error in the universe.
Chuckles. I know that feeling well. The error in the universe syndrome. We all have it.
Yeah.
But the source is asking you to do a ruthless cost-benefit analysis. It's asking you to calculate the ROI, the return on interaction of that argument.
The ROI of an argument. I've never thought of it that way.
So you spend 45 minutes getting red in the face, furiously typing a comment on Facebook, your blood pressure goes up, you get agitated and angry, you ignore your kids or your spouse for an hour, and what did you gain? You prove to a stranger or to your uncle who won't change his mind anyway that they got the date of a fictional movie wrong. Was that a profitable trade for your peace of mind and your spiritual well-being?
When you put it that way.
Yeah.
No, it's a terrible, terrible trade.
The source uses a phrase, "Worldly life in the sight of God does not weigh the wing of a mosquito. It's insignificant. Why are you burning your soul's energy, your precious time on this earth, arguing over mosquito wings? Just let them be wrong. It doesn't actually matter."
Okay, that's a powerful reframe for the small stuff. But what about the serious matters? Matters of ethics, justice, faith, truth. Surely we are meant to stand up and fight for those things.
You are meant to stand for them, yes. But the rule there is different, and it's subtle. The rule is, state the truth clearly. Clarify your position with the best evidence you have. If they accept it, wonderful. If they don't, stop.
Stop. Even then, even when it's about something important.
Even then. Do not get dragged into the mud of a pointless back and forth. Once you have stated the truth clearly and respectfully, your duty is done. You are a messenger, not an enforcer. If you keep pushing and pushing after they've made it clear they are rejecting it, you are no longer fighting for the truth. You are fighting for your ego. You are fighting because you can't stand the feeling of being rejected.
That's a hard pill to swallow. And this leads us right into the psychology of why we argue. The source breaks down two fundamental types of arguers, and I found this to be a brilliant diagnostic tool for real life.
It's incredibly useful. The source says that next time you see an argument or find yourself in one, you should ask yourself, which of these two types is this person? Or, which one am I being right now? Type 1 is the arrogant dominator.
I think we all know this character. We've all worked with this person.
This is the person who argues to eat up the atmosphere, as the source puts it. They want to be the alpha in the room. They want the spotlight. They want everyone in the meeting to turn and say, wow, look how he just destroyed that guy with facts and logic. Their motivation is a feeling of superiority. They need to win to feel powerful.
Okay, that's pretty clear. And what's type 2?
Type 2 is much more subtle and often more tragic. This is the insecure defensive arguer. This person isn't arguing to win praise or to feel dominant. They are arguing because they are terrified of being wrong. They are terrified of looking stupid.
And they're not on the attack, they're building a bunker around themselves.
Exactly. Their argument is a shield made of words. They feel that if they admit they are wrong about this one small fact, their entire intelligence, their entire self-worth will be invalidated in front of everyone. They aren't fighting for victory. They are fighting for survival.
This distinction, it seems absolutely crucial for how we deal with people in our lives. Our kids, our employees, our partners.
It is everything. Because the source gives specific advice on how to treat each type, and it's completely different. You have to diagnose the motivation to know the cure.
Give us the breakdown. How do you handle them?
Okay, let's use a practical example. Let's say you're a manager and you have an employee who is constantly pushing back, arguing about every decision in team meetings.
Okay.
If you diagnose that employee as the arrogant type, if you see that they're trying to undermine you to look cool or to seize control, then the cure is that their ego needs to be checked, or, as the source says, broken slightly. You might need to be firm. You might need to shut down the argument publicly and say, we're moving on. They need a clear signal that they are not the center of the universe.
Okay, so you meet strength with strength, in a way. You check the ego.
Yes, but, and this is the critical part, what if that employee is the insecure type? What if they are arguing because they are terrified? You're going to fire them if they made a single mistake, so they defend every little point to the death. And you treat them like the arrogant type. You shut them down publicly, you embarrass them. What happens to that person?
You crush them. You absolutely crush them. You confirm their deepest, darkest fear that they are, in fact, stupid and worthless.
Exactly. You destroy their confidence. The insecure arguer doesn't need their ego broken. Their ego is already fragile. They need what the source calls patching up. They need reassurance. If you pull them aside and say, hey, I really value your input, you're a smart person, but on this particular point, we're going in a different direction, they will immediately stop arguing. Why? Because you made them feel safe.
That is huge. If you treat an insecure child as if they're an arrogant, defiant child, you'll traumatize them. If you treat an arrogant employee as if they're just insecure and fragile, you'll just enable their narcissism.
That's the diagnosis. You have to look at the heart behind the words. Why are they fighting? Are they trying to dominate, or are they just trying to survive?
So let's follow this chain. What happens if we don't diagnose it? What happens if we just let the arguments rip, especially between two arrogant types? This brings us to the fourth disaster, which is the escalation, hostility.
Yes, the inevitable escalation. The source describes a clear chain reaction. Argumentation is the spark. If you don't stomp it out, it becomes anger. If you constantly feed that anger, it becomes a grudge. And if you hold on to that grudge, it festers and becomes hostility. And for this state, the prophet used a very specific, very violent metaphor. He called it the shaver.
The shaver. Like a razor.
Like a razor. But then he immediately clarified, I do not say it shaves hair. It shaves away religion.
Wow. That's a disturbing image. It implies that this kind of deep-seated conflict literally scrapes your spirituality right off your skin, leaving you bare. How does that work? Is it some kind of spiritual magic?
It's not magic. It's mechanics. It's cause and effect. Think about the container of your heart. If your heart is filled to the brim with hatred for another person, if you are constantly replaying the argument in your head, plotting what you're going to say next time you see them, secretly hoping that they fail in life, is there any room left for gratitude, for peace, for a connection with the divine?
No. It's occupied territory. The hater is living rent-free in your head and your heart.
Exactly. And look at the behavior that comes from hostility. When you truly hate someone, do you speak the truth about them? Of course not. You start to slander them. You engage in backbiting. You twist their words. You start saying things like, oh, did you hear what he did? You lose your own integrity. You simply cannot be a person of faith and a person of malice at the same time. The malice acts like a chemical and dissolves or shaves away the faith.
It's a parasite. It eats the host from the inside out.
And the source mentions a very stark category, the most hated of men to God. And it says, this person is the one who is fiercely quarrelsome, the one who is unyielding in their argument, the one who keeps a lawsuit going for 10 years over a fence, not because of the fence, but just to spite the other guy.
So the takeaway here is pure spiritual survival. It is far better to lose the argument, to let the other guy think he won, to let him have the last word on Facebook, than to win the argument and let that victory plant the seed of hostility that shaves your soul.
It is better to be defeated in a trivial debate than to be spiritually bankrupt on Judgment Day.
Okay, we're almost through the list. Let's talk about the fifth disaster. This one feels particularly relevant for our modern age of influencers, public speakers, and the TED Talk crowd. Performative eloquence.
Yes. The source has some fantastic old-school names for this. Deepening the throat or affected speech. It refers to people who consciously manipulate their speech, their vocabulary, their tone, in order to sound more intelligent, more profound, or more holy than they actually are.
The throat clearers. I know exactly what you mean. It's the person who uses a 5-syllable word when a 1-syllable word would do. The person who is obsessed with making everything rhyme.
The source specifically warns against two things: obsessive, forced rhyming, and the use of obscure, archaic words that no one understands. The goal in both cases is style over substance. It's narcissism disguised as communication.
It's like those corporate emails that say things like, we need to synergize the paradigm shift of the optical deliverables going forward. And you're just sitting at your desk thinking, do you just want me to send you the file or not?
Chuckles. Exactly. That is a perfect modern example. That is what the classics called ishrub, making things strange and complicated for no reason. And you have to ask, why do people talk like that?
To sound smart, to sound important, to create a distance.
Right. They are prioritizing their own image over your understanding. And the source says that these people are detested because speech is a trust. It's a tool given to you to convey truth and meaning. If you use that tool primarily to dazzle people and make them admire you, you are abusing the tool.
There's a beautiful story in the notes about a famous preacher and his father. I feel like this story it sums up the cure for this disease perfectly.
It's a very cinematic moment. You have this young man who is about to go up to the pulpit to deliver a sermon. He's a rising star. He's practiced his speech for hours. He has his clever rhymes ready. He's wearing his finest robes. He's ready to crush it. He's ready for his viral moment.
And just as he's about to step up.
Just as he is putting his foot on the first step, his father, a wise older man sitting in the front row, reaches out and gently tugs on the hem of his robe.
Just a little tug, a little anchor.
Little anchor. And he leans in and whispers in his son's ear, "My son, it doesn't matter what you say. It matters what they understand."
It matters what they understand.
Yeah.
It hits hard.
That is the golden rule of all sincere communication. If you are speaking to impress, you are performing. You're an actor on a stage. If you're speaking to inform and benefit, you are serving. You are a teacher.
It completely shifts the focus from the speaker to the listener.
Completely. The performative speaker gets off the stage and asks their friend, how did I sound? Did I look good? The sincere speaker gets off the stage and hopes, did they get it? Will it help them?
Now, I have to ask the clarifying question. Is all eloquence bad? I mean, we love poetry. We love a well-crafted speech that gives us goosebumps. Is beauty in language a bad thing?
No, not at all. Beauty is from God. Eloquence is a gift. If the rhyme comes naturally from the heart, if the poetic image helps the truth enter the soul more easily, that is praiseworthy. The problem isn't eloquence, it's affectation. The problem is the artificiality, the forcing it.
So it's about the intention again.
It's always about the intention. If you spend all night practicing a clever rhyme just so people in the audience will clap and say, wow, he's a lion of the pulpit, that's the trap. But if a beautiful rhyme just flows from your sincere heart in the moment, that's a gift. The result of the first is an audience that is dazzled but leaves understanding nothing. The result of the second is an audience that is moved and leaves with clarity.
Got it. So don't force the funk.
Chuckles.
Yeah.
Exactly. Be clear first, and if beauty comes along for the ride, all the better.
All right, finally, let's tackle the sixth and final disaster on this list. Vulgarity, obscenity, and context. The rule seems pretty hardline at first glance. A believer is not vulgar.
Paradise is forbidden to the one who is foul-mouthed. That is the explicit warning in the source. And it defines obscenity, or fush, as expressing ugly or private matters in explicit, crude, and unnecessary terms. This specifically refers to matters regarding intimacy, bodily functions, and that sort of thing.
So it's about having a certain level of modesty and cleanliness of the tongue?
Yes. The idea is that if the heart is clean, the language that comes out of it will naturally be clean. If the water coming out of your tap is brown and rusty, it's a sign that the tank it's coming from is rusted.
But, and this is a very important nuance, I think, the source brings up what you called an academic exception.
Yes, and this is crucial, because otherwise religion can be misinterpreted as a form of prudishness that actually hinders life. So the question is explicit language always forbidden? And the answer from the source is a clear no.
So when is it okay? When is it necessary?
In specific settings of necessity, the source names 3: medicine, law, and religious education.
Right, that makes perfect sense. If I go to my doctor, I can't say, Doc, my tummy-wummy feels a little bit yucky. I need to be precise and use the correct terms for body parts and functions.
Exactly. And the doctor needs to be able to ask you precise, explicit questions about your organs and your bodily functions. If they use vague metaphors because they're embarrassed, they might misdiagnose you. In that context, precision and explicit language is a form of mercy.
Same with the judge in a courtroom.
The same with the judge. If a serious crime was committed, the judge needs the explicit details of what happened in order to pass a fair sentence. He cannot deal in euphemisms and flowery language.
So context is king. The setting and the audience determine what language is appropriate.
Context is everything, but the source warns of a specific failure of logic here, a specific mistake that people make. We can call it the student's trap.
The student's trap, what is that?
Okay, so imagine a young student of law or religion. He's reading these heavy scholarly textbooks, and in these books, he sees these explicit clinical terms written down by the great scholars of the past. This specific body part, that specific intimate act, this particular bodily fluid, and he thinks to himself, well, this great scholar wrote it, it's in a holy book, so it must be okay for me to say it.
Okay, so he takes that highly specialized language out of the classroom.
And he brings it to the street. He goes to a casual dinner party with mixed company, or more likely today, he goes onto Facebook or Twitter, and he uses those same explicit, clinical, legal terms in a general conversation. And in his mind, he thinks he's being academic, he thinks he's being truthful and unfiltered.
But actually, he's just being gross and making everyone uncomfortable.
He is being a fool. The source literally calls such a person a fool. Because he lacks social intelligence. He lacks what's called adab, or etiquette. He fails to understand that what is said in a private lesson among legal scholars is not meant for the public newsfeed.
I see this on social media all the time, people posting really graphic details about religious rulings or medical issues on their public timeline where grandmas and kids and people from all walks of life are scrolling.
And it causes what is known as fitna, which means confusion, trial, and disturbance. The average person isn't equipped for that level of explicit discussion in that context. They get shocked. They get disgusted. They might even be turned off from the subject entirely. And the student defends himself by saying, but it's the truth. I'm just quoting the book.
Right.
Yes, it is the truth. But you served a perfectly good meal on a dirty plate in the wrong restaurant at the wrong time. You have to respect your audience.
It's like trying to perform open-heart surgery in the middle of a cafeteria. Surgery is a noble, life-saving act. But please don't do it next to my salad.
That is the perfect image. Keep the surgery in the sterile operating room. Keep the explicit legal and medical language in the context of the classroom, the clinic, or the courtroom, where it is necessary and beneficial.
So wow, we have covered a lot of ground here. We've looked at these 6 disasters. Indulging in falsehood, which is bragging about our sins. The weight of a single word, which is about not playing God. Argumentation, which is the ego trap. Hostility, which is the shaver that removes faith. Performative eloquence, which is just showing off. And finally, vulgarity, which is about lacking context and social intelligence.
It is a pretty comprehensive list of how we can go wrong with our speech.
It feels like a minefield. Honestly, looking at this whole list, my immediate instinct is to maybe I should just never speak again.
Yeah.
Just to be safe.
And ironically, that is the ultimate preventative strategy that the source recommends at the very end.
The silence strategy.
The final advice is this. Silence should be your permanent default state. Speech should be the emergency exception.
That is a radical flip of how we normally live.
Yeah.
Usually we think talking is the default, and we only become silent when we run out of things to say. This is saying the opposite. Silence is the baseline. Only break the silence if you have a very good and necessary reason to do so.
It's about implementing a filter. Before you open your mouth, run a quick checklist. Is this true? Is this necessary? Is this kind? If it fails any of those tests, just stay silent. Remember the East and West warning. If you don't say the harmful word in the first place, you can't be held accountable for it. You are safe.
Silence is the ultimate safety net.
It is. The source uses the analogy of an arrow. Once the arrow leaves the bow, you cannot call it back. But as long as that arrow is in your quiver, you are in complete control of it. Your words are your arrows.
This has been a true deep dive. And it's one of those topics that I feel changes how you move through the world immediately. Like, as soon as we finish recording this, I'm going to be thinking about every single sentence I say to our producer.
And that is the entire goal, just that moment of awareness, that pause before speaking.
Before we sign off, we always like to leave the listener with a final provocative thought, something to chew on after the deep dive is over.
We talked about the terrifying metric of East and West. We talked about the merciful veil. But the source mentions one more image that I think is perhaps the most powerful and practical of all. It's the simple fact that words are written down. In the religion's worldview, there are angels on our shoulders recording every syllable. But even if you look at it from a completely secular perspective, our words have a record. They have consequences. They exist after we say them.
So here's the thought experiment for everyone listening.
Imagine that tonight, at exactly 11:59 p.m., there's a knock on your door, you open it, and there's a courier, a delivery person, and they hand you a thick, heavy, printed and bound book.
Right.
And on the cover, in simple letters, it says, the complete transcript of today's date. You open it, and it contains every single word you spoke today, every text message you sent, every email you wrote, every whisper to your spouse, every joke you made at work, every curse word you muttered under your breath in traffic, every argument you had online.
Absolutely everything. The full record.
The full, unedited record. And the courier says to you, you have to read this aloud now. You have to read it to your mother or to your children. Or, if you are a believer, you have to stand and read it aloud before God.
There. That thought makes my stomach turn. Physically.
And that's the question to leave with. Would you be proud of that book? Would you be able to get through it without burning with shame and regret? Or would you be utterly terrified of what's on those pages?
I think most of us, if we're being honest, would be terrified.
The source tells us that transcript is being written every single day. We just don't see the pages piling up. But eventually, the book will be handed to us.
That is a sobering thought to end on. But it's exactly the kind of wake-up call we need. The takeaway is to be your own editor. Edit the script in your head before you speak it into existence.
Indeed. The delete button works beautifully on a keyboard. It does not exist on the human tongue.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this heavy but incredibly necessary topic.
It was a pleasure. Let's all try to keep our matches in the box.
Absolutely. And to you, the listener, thanks for lending us your ears. Use them well and use your tongue even more carefully. We'll see you on the next deep dive.